It's another step in an escalating trade dispute between China and the West. The European Commission drastically increased import tariffs on Chinese electric cars.
How the European Union is handling the flood of Chinese-made electric vehicles, like Tesla's, into their market. Well, it looks like their approach just took a surprising turn. In June, the EU announced plans to impose hefty tariffs on Chinese electric cars, arguing that these vehicles benefit from unfair subsidies and could harm European EV manufacturers. But now they've decided to slash those tariffs. What changed? It was shared by the Commission that there is a draft decision to place permanent extra charges on electric cars coming from China. This move is aimed at battery-powered electric vehicles. The Commission plans to make these charges official soon. Tesla will now have to pay a 9% duty on cars imported into the EU, instead of the original expected 20.8% as stated by the Commission. The company, led by Elon Musk, had asked for planned tariffs to be adjusted based on the specific subsidies it gets in China. They also mentioned that import duties on other electric vehicle companies will be reduced as well. These new tariffs will be added to the 10% duty that the EU already has on electric car imports. Back in June, the EU announced plans to raise tariffs on Chinese electric cars, believing that these vehicles get a lot of unfair financial support and could harm European electric car makers. The European Commission, which runs the EU, shared an early conclusion that China's battery electric vehicle industry gets unfair subsidies. They also stated that it's in the EU's best interest to apply temporary extra duties on electric cars coming from China. The regulatory body mentioned that after reviewing feedback from interested parties on the planned tariffs, there would be a small adjustment to the proposed duty rates, based on the valid comments received about the temporary measures. Tesla's shares went up by more than 1% in the US morning trading after the EU announced its draft decision. The EU explained that it decided to give Tesla a lower individual duty rate as an exporter from China. This follows a well-supported request from Elon Musk's company to the EU, asking for the planned tariffs on its Chinese-made electric vehicles to be recalculated based on the specific subsidies Tesla gets in China. BYD, the electric vehicle company backed by Warren Buffett, had its tariffs lowered from 17.4% to 17%. Geely's rate dropped from 19.9% to 19.3%, and SAIC's rate went from 37.6% to 36.3%. BYD, Geely and SAIC did not reply to requests for comment outside of working hours in China. Other companies working within the EU in its investigation into China's heavy subsidies for electric vehicles will face a 21.3% tariff, according to the Commission. Companies that are not cooperating will face a 36.3% import duty. This is a decrease from the earlier 37.6% rate. However, other planned tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles will largely stay the same. The EU's investigation is still ongoing, so these tariffs are not yet in effect. Negotiations between Brussels and Beijing are still continuing. Tesla will have a lower tariff from the EU on its electric vehicles made in China. Former US President Trump recently caused a big stir by suggesting in a campaign speech that he would place a 100% tariff on cars made in Mexico by Chinese companies if sold in the US. He warned the American auto market would face serious trouble if he doesn't win the November election, implying those cars wouldn't be sold under his leadership. Trump's speech caused a stir when some thought he implied that there would be a bloodbath in the US if he isn't re-elected. His comments highlighted a broader concern in the West about China's rapidly growing electric vehicle industry. Chinese EV makers, with their large-scale productions and better access to raw materials and batteries, are able to produce cheaper EVs that could outcompete Western manufacturers, raising fears about China's dominance in global markets. A Chinese official dismissed the remarks, accusing the US of creating a misleading narrative. The official claimed that Washington is turning economic and trade issues into political and security matters. Chinese EVs have mainly alarmed Western automakers due to their low prices, rather than security concerns. BYD doesn't sell cars in the US, but affordable Chinese EVs like the BYD Seagull hatchback pose a future threat to American automakers. Its standout feature is the price, just $9,698, which is over $50,000 less than the average American EV. BYD, based in Shenzhen and backed by Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway, became the world's largest electric vehicle manufacturer in late 2023, surpassing Tesla. Chinese cars imported into the US face a 25% tariff, but those assembled in Mexico with Chinese parts only pay a 2.5% tariff, due to the US-Mexico-Canada trade pact. Although BYD isn't planning to sell in the US soon, it is considering setting up a plant in Mexico. In February, Tesla's CEO Elon Musk cautioned investors that without trade barriers, Chinese EV companies could demolish their Western competitors. This warning came after BYD surpassed Tesla as the world's top electric car seller. Chinese car makers are expanding by building more factories abroad. They are doing this as other countries think about limiting imports of electric cars from China. Chery Auto is talking with the Italian government about opening a factory there. If the deal goes through, Chery would be one of the first Chinese companies to have a factory in Europe. BYD, the biggest electric car maker in the world, is setting up factories in Thailand, Brazil, Hungary, and Uzbekistan. BYD can make 4 million cars a year in China. Its biggest markets outside of China in 2023 were Thailand, Brazil, Israel, and Australia. Chery Auto, the largest Chinese car exporter, plans to invest $400 million to build a factory in Argentina. The factory is expected to produce 100,000 cars by 2030. Last year, Chery sold more than half of its cars outside of China, mostly with gasoline engines. Russia is its largest market abroad, and it also has strong presence in Latin America. In 2014, Chery opened a factory in Brazil that can make 150,000 cars a year. The company is also thinking about building a factory in the UK soon. SAIC, another big Chinese car exporter, with its MG branded cars, is searching for a location in Europe to build an electric vehicle factory. SAIC has set up 3 car factories overseas in Thailand, Indonesia, and India. Great Wall Motor has a plant in Thailand with a capacity of 80,000 cars a year. Geely, which owns brands like Lotus and Volvo, has factories in Belarus, the UK, and Indonesia. China is now the world's largest auto exporter, surpassing Japan last year. The country exported 5.26 million vehicles, worth around $102 billion, according to a recent report. The Chinese government plans to use all available resources to build a complete supply chain for electric vehicles made in China. They're pushing for 3 state-owned automakers to invest more in research and development, even if it affects their profits. Their efforts will likely include technology with semiconductors. The rise of cheaper Chinese EVs has led Honda and Nissan to team up. They plan to develop EV technology and auto intelligence together. This partnership aims to help them scale up their EV production and compete with Chinese car makers. In Europe, there's a growing tension due to the increased presence of Chinese cars. The European Commission is investigating Chinese automakers like BYD, Geely, and SAIC to decide if they should impose tariffs to protect European EV manufacturers. The investigation, which started in October and will last 13 months, will determine if Chinese-made EVs benefit unfairly from state subsidies. This move has heightened tensions between China and the EU. Are these Chinese EVs dominating the EV market? Moreover, will they be able to maintain their stance? Only time will tell. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and we'll see you next time.